The grandeur of the military gala was palpable from the moment guests arrived. Crystal chandeliers cast a soft glow across the banquet hall, highlighting the polished marble floors and opulently dressed attendees. Among them, Nora Bennett, a modest florist, worked quietly and diligently, arranging the finishing touches on an elegant centerpiece for the head table. Despite her plain attire and reserved demeanor, her presence was marked by the understated beauty of her floral creations. Nora had spent hours meticulously crafting arrangements with a selection of rare lilies sourced especially for this evening. She moved with a sense of purpose, her hands deftly weaving stems with practiced grace. Her world was the vivid colors and fragrant blooms, offering a stark contrast to the sharp golds and blacks of the military uniforms surrounding her. However, the evening's elegance was shattered when a prestigious guest, having just admired one of Nora's arrangements, suddenly fell to the floor, convulsing. The once harmonious event turned chaotic as medics rushed to the scene amidst rising panic. A decorated officer stepped forward, eyes accusatory, and unhesitatingly pointed a finger at Nora. "This woman used poison lilies," he declared, his voice slicing through the murmur of shock with conviction. Guests whispered and nodded, their skepticism fueled by prejudice against her simple status. Without a moment to defend herself, Nora found herself the subject of scorn, mocked by those who moments earlier admired her work. The humiliation was complete as security escorted her out, the eyes of judgment following her every step. Her heart ached with the weight of the false accusation, yet she kept her head low, silently protesting her innocence while leaving the gleaming halls behind. Nora Bennett walked the familiar streets back to her modest apartment, the echoes of the gala's judgmental whispers trailing painfully behind her. The summer evening, which began with promise, now felt heavy and oppressive, each step driving home the suffocating weight of disgrace. She hugged the fabric of her coat around herself tighter, as if it would shield her from the world's unjust gaze, and tried to stave off the tears that threatened to spill. Arriving home, Nora felt like a shadow of herself, hollowed out and fragile. The once invitingly warm space now felt cold and alien. She sank into her favorite chair, the adrenaline that had kept her composed finally ebbing away, leaving an empty, icy void in its place. Her innocence burned with shame as she replayed the scene over and over again in her mind, the authoritative officer's finger pointed accusingly, the crowd's disdain, and her own helpless stumble out of the grandeur she had hoped would accept her work. For days, the gloom lingered heavily around Nora, like a smothering blanket. She moved through her routines robotically, watering her potted plants, though the act seemed without purpose, mechanically grooming her beloved cat, Daisy, who seemed to intuitively nuzzle her, offering silent comfort. But she couldn't eat, her appetite decimated by stress, nor could she sleep soundly, every moment of the gala's horrors playing out in her mind's sleepless theater. She would stare at her reflection in the mirror, searching for the bright, tenacious woman she once was. Instead, she found hollow eyes of weariness staring back at her. The look on her face was not one she recognized from the photo of a younger her, framed with care on her nightstand. That photo captured a college student full of dreams and promise, ready to conquer the world with her love for botany. Nora's foray into floral arrangements had begun as a way to bring beauty into the grayness of daily life, but it was also meant to be a stepping stone to her dreams. She'd been a passionate scholarship student, often staying up into the wee hours memorizing Latin plant names and sketching each garden possibility she could imagine. Her professors cheered her ambitions, seeing in her the potential for groundbreaking work in sustainable horticulture. But life had other plans. Nora's mother fell gravely ill midway through her sophomore year, their family's lived experience becoming one under the specter of hospital corridors and whispered life expectancies. Even now, years later, Nora could still recall her resolve as her mother lay by her side, the echoes of soft beeping machines forming a mournful soundtrack in their home. When tuition became an extravagance they could no longer afford, Nora didn't think twice. Without hesitation, she left her studies and took on any available work, a checkout at a grocery store by day, a waitress subjected to unkind patrons by night, doing whatever necessary to ensure her mother had care and comfort. Her sacrifices spoke volumes of love poured into the bright but modest world she built with what little they had. The years without her mother, who had eventually succumbed to her illness, had forged resilience in Nora, a determination to indulge in the passion they once shared, gardening. It started as a hobby and small tribute to her mother, but soon transformed into a small enterprise. She groomed her skills, exhibiting exceptional floral knowledge, and her modest arrangements gained admiration within her neighborhood community. Her floral artistry eventually reached the eyes of the Gala's prestige planner, who saw in her the spark that could add an ethereal touch of elegance to the celebrated event. Now, stripped in an instant of both her professional honor and personal pride, Nora faced the chilling reality of her reputation being tarnished beyond her immediate circle. The very community that supported her whispered secrets and spread rumors, fueled by gossip and suspicion. Each attempt she made to reconnect with clients she'd nurtured over the years met with polite rejection or unanswered calls. Her livelihood was dangling by a fragile thread. Yet, beneath her quiet exterior, a fire flickered. From her chair, she watched life bleed beneath autumn's brushstrokes, guiding her thoughts to brighter hues. How far she fell, and how hard she worked to even get this simple job was a narrative she could not betray. The truth was as innate to her spirit as the life she cultivated in her garden. Her nights were a battle against haunting guilt and aching loss, yet, amid her turmoil, small moments of clarity emerged, a memory captured in fragments, unbidden. Her thoughts circled back to the ominous lilies. She recalled how carefully she handled them, their silky petals intact and natural, unaffected by anything harmful. And there was something else in those scattered flashes, a nagging sense that a pivotal detail went unnoticed about that evening at the gala. Her mind, though groggy with remnants of shame, latched onto the myriad faces at the event. There was someone unusual, an aide, inattentive and awkward, his demeanor nervous even as others around him basked in the grandiosity. Could it be a fleeting glimpse of wrongdoing was hidden in his demeanor? This memory, crystallizing slowly, set her resolve anew. With no recourse left, Nora committed herself to sifting through her recollections further. She peered down avenues of conversations to an aide who handled the flower deliveries, thinking back to a brief exchange when they entered the hall. Her jalousies drawn against self-doubt, Nora began plotting a course to uncover the truth of what truly occurred on that fateful night. The gale that brought her disgrace would also usher in redemption. She was determined to see it harnessed to propel her forward, out of darkness, and into the light of untainted vindication. A few days later, as the initial waves of humiliation began to settle into a more manageable background hum of indignation, Nora blinked awake in the early morning light, caught in the orbit of another disjointed memory. It was during the gala, when she crossed paths with a solitary aide she remembered as looking out of place, shifting nervously near the flower arrangements as though he were a fixture of discomfort amidst all the cultivated elegance. Could it be that this unassertive figure held the key to unraveling the mystery around the poisoning? Determined to explore this thread, Nora fortified her resolve. The memory of him handling the lilies, shuffling with curious intent, crinkled with vividness. Emotions mixed with adrenaline prompted her feet into motion as she dressed swiftly, driven by the newfound clarity. She needed answers and knew she couldn't sit idly by. Her first stop was to contact Rachel, the event planner who had hired her for the gala. Rachel had appreciated her artistry and professionalism, so Nora hoped to find an ally or, at the very least, someone willing to consider her side of the story. Picking up her phone with a deep breath, Nora dialed the number, rehearsing the calm plea in her mind that must prevail against resentment. "Rachel speaking," came the polished voice over the line. "Hi, Rachel. It's Nora Bennett," she began, steadying her voice. There was a brief pause, as if Rachel was recalling. "Oh, Nora. I wasn't expecting to hear from you," Rachel replied cautiously. I understand. I just wanted to clarify what truly happened at the gala. I believe there was a misunderstanding, Nora explained. The silence on the other end weighed on her, almost tangible. Nora, I really can't discuss this with everyone busy moving on to the next event, Rachel replied, a note of dismissive business efficiency creeping into her tone. I've heard the talk, and our hands are tied. I just want to see the event footage for a few minutes, Nora pressed on, feeling her patience and hope slipping away by degrees. I'm truly sorry, Nora. We have strict protocols. Good luck, Rachel said, her voice softly regretful before the line clicked dead. After a moment of pacing to dispel the cocktail of rejection, Nora decided to try another route. It was clear she couldn't rely on willing assistance from those above, so she turned her focus to someone who had been overlooked by the elegant authority, the resolute security guard who briefly caught her eye during the fracas. She recalled his compassionate nod as she left the premises under duress. Perhaps he would understand her plight. Armed with a renewed sense of purpose, Nora made her way back to the scene of her unraveling, the grand venue now quieter than the clamor-filled evening she remembered. Her heart thudded lightly as she approached, filled alternately with dread and hope. It was easy to spot him, despite the half-light of the security office. As soon as his eyes met hers, recognition was followed by an alert shift in posture. Hey, you're the florist from the gala, he greeted gingerly, looking left and right to ensure his conversation wouldn't draw attention. Yes, and I need your help. I know it's asking a lot, but if I could just see the footage, she began earnestly, choosing honesty as her path. The security guard whose name tag read Eric, listened with furrowed brows. His expression softened, and he nodded quickly. I heard about what happened, and it was unfair. Look, maybe I can help. Let's just keep it short and quiet. Eric's compass of moral integrity turned favorably toward her, a shining beacon in the storm of distrust she'd been battling. Together, they swiftly maneuvered around the bank of security monitors. Nora felt riddled with anticipation, watching the recorded purgatory winding backward to that pivotal evening. It didn't take long to find what she needed. The cameras had captured precisely what her memory had suspected, the aide, fidgeting and placing something amongst the lilies, something she couldn't decipher at first. But as Eric skillfully blew up the grainy footage to focus on the detail, it came clear. The man had furtively produced a small vial from his pocket and tampered with several of the lily stems before hurriedly concealing the item again. There it is, Eric murmured, astonished. He zoomed in, right where Nora had pointed. An enormous weight began lifting from Nora's chest. The brief footage revealed everything, that this act, performed when no one else thought to look, tainted the purity of her work. Do you recognize him? Eric asked. Yes, I remember he was an aide to one of the guests, Nora affirmed, feeling buoyed by her vindication. That's Cameron Ellis. Works closely with one of the senior officers, Eric noted, scribbling the information on a pad as a reminder. Looks like he's in more trouble than you were accused of being. Nora nodded gratefully at Eric, the tepid mask of dismissal now replaced by dignity and a spine-bolstering truth, while an inner voice spoke with confidence. I have to get this to the right people. With a warmth that rivaled the floral palette she so loved, Nora's determination was rare and beautiful, nurtured in the presence of kindness. The first clarity her mind summoned would guide her next steps, all paths converging toward justice. Armed with the power of evidence, she knew she had to reveal the truth publicly, to reclaim not only her name but to prove that accountability and justice could, indeed, prevail. She left the building, her steps falling in rhythm with a renewed sense of purpose, setting her sights on a path forward bright with possibility. With the crucial video footage securely on a USB drive, Nora felt an exhilarating mix of liberation and resolve. She had been the target of unfounded accusations, but now she held definitive proof of her innocence. The challenge before her was clear: to ensure the truth had a stage, one larger even than the military gala where her ordeal had begun. Nora spent the evening contacting Rachel with a tenacity that couldn't be ignored. Eventually, her persistence convinced the event planner to watch the clip. Rachel's eyes widened as she viewed the evidence. Her initial skepticism evaporated, replaced by understanding and the dawning realization of her own misstep in not investigating deeper. "I'm sorry, Nora," Rachel whispered, her face flushed with unease, her voice weighted with sincerity. "We can present this to the board. This shouldn't have happened to you." Thus armed and supported, Nora decided they needed to act swiftly. The next gala, attended by the same officials and guests, offered the perfect opportunity to unveil the truth. Rachel, now a discreet ally, orchestrated an understated plan. The evening arrived, bristling with anticipation, another lavish event set against a backdrop of polished brass and murmurs of prestige. The room hummed with anticipation as guests gathered, obliviously enacting the same pageant of whispers and reputations that had once judged her. Keeping to the sides, Nora observed the crowd with measured calm, her heart a gentle thrum of conviction. Rachel, with tactful stealth, approached General Whitman, the event's designated master of ceremonies. She conveyed Nora's story, supplemented by the video evidence, in quick, pointed strokes. The general, seeking clarity and justice, ordered an immediate closed-door review with key military personnel. As Nora waited outside the makeshift conference room, the nervously shifting aide, Cameron Ellis, was brought late into the discussion, unaware of the revelation at hand. Within moments, the enclosed space buzzing with the rising murmur of voices abruptly intensified, a sharp exclamation ringing even through the thick paneled doors. The truth, undeniable and absolute, flooded into their midst. Nora stood by the open door as General Whitman stepped out, giving her a nod of recognition, a confirming signal that justice was not deferred. The room's energy shifted tectonically around her, a definitive assemblage of the truth. Nearly unnoticed, the sound of approaching voices steeped in consternation spread through the gala hall as whispers cascaded between guests. Those who had been so quick to judge now turned with inquiries poised but unanswered. Attendees who witnessed Nora's earlier public humiliation furrowed their brows with furred concern. They began to sense that a correction in the night's balance was upon them. In the center of the hall, spotlights glancing off polished uniforms landed on the podium where General Whitman stood resolute. With gravity and unbreakable clarity, he disclosed the findings to an audience held in rapt attention. He laid bare the incident and pointed to Ellis, complicit in the treachery. The general's tone was neither forgiving nor softened by ceremony. The evidence was presented. The truth was inescapable. Ellis, who had since taken his place among the crowd, seemed simultaneously to shrink and flush with the heat of exposure. It was his unraveling, ordained by careful acts of his own creation. The room bristled with the revelation, lines drawn clearly between right and wrong. Nora's presence just off stage was acknowledged by the general as he called for her introduction. There, under the alighting gaze of all gathered, she stepped forward. Initially an enigma cloaked in simplicity, now seen as a figure of quiet fortitude. The accusations against Nora Bennett were unfounded, General Whitman pronounced, his voice an authoritative, unbiased herald. Her integrity remains intact, her artistry beyond reproach. In dismissing Ellis, his removal aptly fit the crime, stripped of title and duty under solemn order. His exit, flanked by security, was both quiet and richly resonant with consequence. It represented a hard lesson showcased before those who once allowed prejudices and assumption to blind rational judgment. The tables, moral and literal, had indeed turned. Conversations shifted with awkward apologies borrowed from contrition, kindness and warmth unwinding in place of frosty disdain. Previous skeptics approached Nora with softened expressions, offering apologies, their shifts in perspective guilelessly bare. Rachel appeared beside her, squeezing Nora's hand in silent support, their earlier informal rapport now cemented by contrived solace. "You did it, Nora," Rachel said, eyes bright with emotion. "You had courage I can't fathom. This all could have been so different without you having the strength to fight back." With a gentle smile, Nora's heart swelled, untangling the worry that had grasped it so fiercely. The acceptance from the crowd, though belated, was a prism reflecting dignity that she knew she rightfully owned. There was no denying the shift, the sway back to respect she earned through patient resilience and unyielding grace. The proof, and her willingness to bring it forward, sang a sweet refrain where it mattered most, in judgment and truth bearing equally. Nora found solace in knowing her actions spoke louder than whispers, justice a clarion call amid prejudice, and truth her steadfast companion. And as the gala, much like a phoenix, entered a brighter and truer chapter, it set the stage for an ending bound by sincerity rather than fear. The simplest truths bore the mightiest meanings here, strung along by honesty and hands held high in vindication. As the night's tension began to unravel into resolution, the whispers of a different kind filled the gala hall, a murmur of respect and admiration that replaced the scandal that had once overshadowed the event. The ripple effect of the truth became apparent as the crowd gravitated toward Nora Bennett, the once silent florist now at the heart of vindication. Cameron Ellis had been confirmed guilty, the evidence irrefutable and damning. As he was escorted out of the gala, his face a canvas of denial and diminishing bravado, the weight of his actions hung heavy in the air. Once eager to claim innocence, he found no allies or foothold. The granite justice cast him out to await the legal consequences of his deceit. To have thought he could obscure his actions beneath Nora's integrity was a miscalculation of grand proportions. In the aftermath, the guests who had previously darted glances of contempt had now shifted their gaze, one marked by respect and acknowledgement toward Nora. They began to approach her, their words tender quizzes of apology and softened flattery spun from regret. "I misjudged you," admitted a woman dressed immaculately in sapphire, her voice laced with an honesty that mirrored her regret. "Your artistry is unmatched, and your courage, even more so. It's my hope you'll consider decorating our upcoming events," added a noted diplomat nearby, his offer buoyed by kindness rather than elitism. "We'd be honored." Nora, in her modest composure, accepted each apology and offer with humility, her demeanor still warm despite the earlier frost. She nodded graciously, her quiet confidence now apparent to all, a beacon rather than a shadow. Among the attendees, General Whitman took great care to approach her. His expression carried a somber wisdom, and he extended his hand, a gesture of respect and earnest apology. His sincerity was apparent, the halo of authority he wore imbued with personal intention. "Miss Bennett," he began, his voice clear, "I owe you an apology. You showed a spirit I can hope to match. Be assured your work continues to represent a legacy, carved from more than flowers." Standing before him, Nora shook his offered hand, thankful for his acknowledgement but also keenly aware of the value of self-authenticated integrity. In the choir of voices seeking to rectify wrongdoing, she dignified his effort. Amidst the cautious reintegration into Gala society, Nora was approached not only by individuals but by functionaries well-placed to elevate reputations. An announcement followed, given during an official segment of the evening, which magnified Nora's resolve into the formal commendation of the event itself. In a moment that was both a closing benediction and igniting commencement, General Whitman publicly presented Nora with a medal, a prestigious symbol of honor and truth. "It is with great privilege that we recognize Nora Bennett," he addressed the crowd, "for her unparalleled courage in pursuing justice and safeguarding her integrity and ours." Under the chandelier's glow, Nora's heart swelled with pride. As the medal was clasped around her neck, she felt the weight of everything it represented, not just her vindication but a spotlight on an underappreciated integrity, her steadfastness in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds. A cheer rose up among the gala's attendees, a resonance of clapping hands, not just politely rhythmic but richly celebrative, giving texture to the respect that had been missing when she left the venue those few long nights ago. Nearby, Rachel moved closer, her face lit with excitement and an understanding of what opportunities lay before Nora. "You know, you have a gift that transcends this room," she remarked, her voice alive with emotion. "And I'm in awe of what you've done." In the aftermath, as the plush event mingled around her with applauding pomp, Nora began to plan her next steps. The offers to partner with her for larger floral undertakings were abundant, but one stood closest to her heart: the prestigious position to be lead florist for future gala events, extended by none other than General Whitman himself. Nora reflected on the significance behind accepting this role. It was a recognition of what she fought to show, that beauty woven with truth would always find a way to blossom in the hearts of those who truly see. And for Nora, her journey was not one simply tethered to vindication, rather, it reached toward legacy's flourishing. As the night wound down, she left the hall with purposeful strides. In a gentle, poetic ending, she did not turn back toward the venue but looked forward, her steps leading toward new beginnings, an expansion of dreams once thought suspended. Nora exited through grand doors, entering into an evening that mirrored her earlier tumult with stars shimmering unanimous approval. Those who gathered to bid her adieu saw not just a competent florist but someone adorned with the respect she had so richly earned. The one-time shunned florist was now a celebrated figure, no longer invisible. Her grace stood unchallenged, formidable in her quiet resolve, dauntless amid challenge. The night sky above contrasted gently with the harmony within, each twinkling light, just as with each petal she had arranged, echoed the resilience and redemption melded into her story. The very public acknowledgement of her triumph sourced from private resolve enabled others to empathize and champion not just her artistry, but her journey, inspiration cascading through a throng of fresh petals amidst new days henceforth. Thus, Nora Bennett departed, a woman not just exonerated but cherished, along a path that had smooth transitions built from steep turns, to greet a horizon she now crafted distinctly her own, laying petals of truth and harmony spanning beneath her reconstructed narrative.